we'll wait a little bit to see if people will join. But hi, my name is Lauren. I'm an educator here at the Bee Museum. And today we have a really exciting week. Oh, it's going to be so cool because on Wednesday it is the Earth Day. It's Earth Day! On Wednesday it's Earth Day, and to celebrate Earth Day, I thought today we might talk about trees. And trees are one of the coolest organisms on this planet, so I'm super excited to talk to you about it. So, just because we're talking about trees today, I am here in front of our Because of Plants exhibit here at the Bee Museum, and I have a question for you guys. So, think in your heads at your houses, why do you think trees are so important? And I have a couple answers, but I don't know, we'll guess. So, one of the ways that I think trees are important is that they provide habitats. Habitats are really important to us here at the Bee Museum. We love animals here at the Bee Museum, and trees provide houses and food for all kinds of animals and increase the biodiversity of the earth, which is awesome. Okay, and I'm going to show you an example of a habitat that can be a way that an animal has created a habitat. Look, it's a nest. You might see these in a tree around your house. And actually, birds collect things surrounding trees. They collect grasses and straw and all kinds of things, and they put them into a nest that is usually high above in the trees so that lots of animals can't get to their eggs, and that that the birds can protect their babies, which is awesome. So habitats, that's a big deal. Another way, I kind of hinted to it before, is fruit. This is kind of a crazy fruit, but so they produce all kinds of fruits that we love, like oranges and apples, things that we have for snacks all the time, and things that we should eat because fruit is great for you. And then they produce things like coconut. So this is a coconut seed right here, and it's able to produce that tree that produces the coconut. And it's kind of funny looking. And actually, the tropical trees that produce coconuts, we're going to talk about some tree rings later, but fun fact, tree rings are not produced in those tropical trees. They are inside of the tree. It's more like a bubble, which is cool. Bubble for each season, because the season of growth is actually pretty continuous because of the climate. It's warm always there, which is pretty cool. Okay, so fruit, that's a big deal. Okay, so, and last but not least, we are going to talk about how trees help us, so fruit and also habitats, so we love animals, but we can't breathe without trees, right? They produce oxygen for us, and they take all kinds of negative things out of the environment. They take carbon dioxide, which a buildup of carbon dioxide would be bad for us because of all kinds of problems with the climate. It would increase the temperature of the planet, which would be bad for us and all kinds of animals. So trees help us all the time. It's a big deal. I love trees, guys. Okay, so now we are going to, like I said, talk about tree rings. And tree rings are so cool. And does anybody have a guess as what tree rings are? If you want to learn about tree rings, raise your hand in your house, because tree rings are so cool. But I'm going to bring out an example for you. Are you ready? Hey, everybody. So this right here is a giant section of a tree. This is from a really large tree called a bristlecone pine. And the bristlecone pines are so cool because they are some of the oldest trees on the planet, and also some of the oldest known organisms on the planet. They can get up to thousands of years old. And this one right here, it's not that old. It's 33 years old. I counted all these rings for you before I got onto this Facebook Live, but they're so cool. So we're going to teach you how to learn all about these tree rings. Okay, so everybody, if you can see all these rings, you know that there's, oh, you can't see me. Okay, so if you can see all these tree rings, you can see that there's darker portions and there's lighter portions. So the lighter portions is when the tree is growing in the springtime and in the summertime, when there's lots of water and nutrients for them, and it helps them to grow a lot more. So usually the lighter part of the tree ring is going to be wider than the darker part. So the darker part of the tree ring is supposed to show, or does show, the ending of the growing season. So that's in the fall and maybe towards the winter, but usually towards the fall when there's not as much nutrients for them or water, and so it gets darker. And the darker lines right here, they show us the end of the growing season, so we are able to look at it and say, oh, this is one season that it grew. So because each line, each ring depicts how, or shows each season that they grow, we are able to tell how many years it has grown by the amount of rings it has. So this one I counted before, but that's 33 rings. So it lived quite a long time, probably older than most of you who are watching, but it's really cool how we can tell how long the tree lived even if it doesn't talk. It can't tell us its age, but we can tell by how many rings it has, which is super cool. And guys, we can also tell a lot of other stuff about the tree and about its conditions that it lived in from the tree rings, because how wide it is tells us how good of a season it was, how much water there was, if there was enough nutrients for it. So if it's wider, it was a really good season. There was lots of rain and it could grow a lot. But if it's thinner, like at this part right here, that's a pretty thin line, that means that there might not have been enough nutrients, or an event might have happened that caused it to not grow as much, like a fire or a bug infestation that might have caused the tree to not grow as much, which is interesting. You can tell the whole history of a landscape from just a tree ring. So cool, right? Okay, now we are going to talk about this right here. And it's really cool, right? That darker part, it looks kind of like the heart of the tree. And that is because it is the heartwood of the tree. It's the very center. And that is its first growth right there. And as the tree continues to grow, more of the rings are going to turn into heartwood. And the reason it's darker is it contains something called tannins. And those tannins restrict what the rings can do. So the rest of the rings, they transport water and they transport nutrients because they are made out of xylem right here. But the heartwood right here, it's not able to transfer as much water or nutrients. It's mostly used for storage, and it's mostly dead wood. So that's pretty interesting, right? I love tree rings. I think they're so pretty. And I'm going to show you one other tree ring right over here. And it is from, so the last one, that was from a Bristol pine. And then this one right here is from a Swedish aspen, which is a really cool looking tree. You should look it up afterwards. But a Swedish aspen usually grows in Europe. Unlike that Bristol pine over there, they grow in Utah, where we are here at the Bean Museum, and all over the United States, mostly in high elevation is where that Bristol pine lives. But this one is from Europe, And you can see there are two places of growth. You see those two circles right here? And that is because at one point they were two different tree trunks. There were two different sections of the tree, and they grew together over time, which is pretty interesting. And you can see right here this scarring right there. And that is evidence that something happened to this tree. And if you are a scientist who studies trees, tree rings, that's called a dendrochronologist, they would be able to detect what might have happened there, which is cool. And guys, because you learned all these things about tree rings, you are on your way to becoming a dendrochronologist yourself, which is super cool. You go. That's awesome. Okay, so now we are going to talk about something that you can do at home, which is identify trees. And identification of trees is super fun. We love trees here at the Bee Museum, and I hope you guys love trees. So we are going to talk about the two different categories of trees. Are you ready? Okay, so the two different categories of trees are conifers and deciduous trees. So first we're going to talk about conifers. Conifers are trees that have needles, and they don't drop their needles in the winter. And they don't change color either, and they usually live in colder climates, but not always. And actually, you can be a deciduous conifer and drop your leaves, but mostly conifers are just going to drop your leaves. And, oh, my leaf poster is falling, but that's okay, because leaves fall, right? So you're all good. Okay, so conifers, an example of a conifer would be a pine tree or a spruce tree, any tree that you would use for Christmas. And then also, one of my favorite conifers are the redwood trees. They're giant, beautiful trees. They're some of the tallest trees on the earth, and they are conifers, which is so cool. And the name conifer comes from how they protect their seed and their seed dispersal. So how they get seeds to grow, and that is because they have cones. So right here, like the pine cone, they usually have a protection around their seeds, so it helps them to protect from birds who want to eat them, or other animals who want to eat them, or some natural occurrences that might hurt the seed, like a frost that might hurt the seed, and they want the seed to grow and become another tree so they can have more trees around them and more protection and more offspring. So they protect it through these cones, like a pine cone, which is really cool. You can hear cone in conifer, right? Conifer, cone, same thing, which is really cool. Okay, awesome, guys. And now we are going to talk about deciduous trees. Okay, deciduous trees are some of my favorite trees in the fall because they are so, so beautiful. The deciduous trees are able to drop their leaves, and they drop them because they are taking back that nutrients into the tree so they can survive the winter. And they don't have to put energy towards those leaves anymore. They can just keep it inside the tree and survive during the winter. But that means they drop their leaves and the leaves turn colors, and usually their leaves are pretty wide and thin. So if you think about it, a wide and thin leaf that drops, can you think of any trees? You can just yell it out. But let me think, an elm tree or an oak tree or even a maple tree where maple syrup comes from, those are all deciduous trees, which is really cool. We love deciduous trees. But, okay guys, now that you have all that information, I am going to show you some leaves, and you're going to tell me if it's a deciduous tree or if it's a coniferous tree. Are you ready? Okay, I'm going to get some leaves right over here. Okay. So, if you look right here, it's pretty flat, right? And it has these lobes. These lobes come from a specific tree. You can tell what kind of tree it is based on those lobes, and that is a oak tree, which is really cool. We love oak trees. And you can see by how thin and flat it is. Guys, are you gonna guess what type of tree it is? It is a deciduous tree. Oh my gosh, I almost spilled myself. But it's a coniferous, goodness. It's a deciduous tree. Okay, we're gonna move to the next one. Maybe I won't get so nervous that time. Okay, are you ready? This one has needles and all kinds of coloring, so it's still pretty green. And what kind of tree is green almost all the time and has needles? That is a coniferous tree, which is pretty cool. This one comes from a Bristol pine, which is really cool. We just saw the rings of a Bristol pine, and then this one was an oak tree right there. Okay, and last but not least, we have another leaf. It's pretty thin. You see it has a really, really long stem. It quakes a little bit in the wind. And this leaf right here, because it's so flat and so thin, I think that it's from a deciduous tree. And it is actually from a quaking aspen, which you can find quaking aspens all throughout the United States, but a lot of northern United States and here in Utah, which is so cool. You can go see a quaking aspen in Utah, which is really cool. That's where the Bee Museum is. Okay, awesome guys. So finally for you, because it's Earth Day and we love trees so much, because you just learned about all of them, I have a challenge for you. And we here at the Bee Museum have a challenge for you. So on Earth Day, and any day really, we want you to look around your house and try and figure out what kind of trees are around your house. For example, I have a flowering pear, a cherry tree, and a oak tree around my house. So you find out what kind of tree is at your house, decide if it's a coniferous tree or if it's a deciduous tree, and then teach somebody about it. And that will make for a very happy Earth Day. And thank you so much for listening to my lesson, and have a great day. Bye guys.